Welcome into the Skinny Podcast. It's the weekly potpourri edition. I'm Richard Skinner, Local12.com digital sports columnist and editor with Rick Broering. As always, it's presented by Blake, the Attorney Mason. We got a lot of sports topics locally to get to. Don't know if we have a national topic this week or not. We got our gambling segment where you got to fade me on Kentucky, folks. I had a bunch of people screaming at me that I'm an idiot, and I am, but don't fade me on the best bet. It's come along very nicely for me thanks to the Fighting Illini. And my favorite portion of the podcast, you can ask me a question on any topic. Go to the Xverse. Hit up the hashtag AskSkinny. Anything. It does not have to be about sports. It can be, and we have a lot of fun with that at the end of the show. Rick, we got so much to get to. College basketball is kind of started in earnest with some exhibition games. We got some secret scrimmages that we can't talk about because they're super secret. And we've got, of course, the NFL and college football and so much more.
Yeah, I think I say this every time of year when we do this podcast or the next two podcasts, but this is my favorite time of the year. When you get that overlap where football and college basketball meet, and NBA just started this week, it's as good as it gets from a sports calendar perspective, in my opinion. But let's go to the Bengals first. And the first thing I want to talk about, Skinny, was the comments made by Joe Burrow after the win over the Browns. And it was basically asked if he was frustrated or upset with the offense's clunkiness. I've got the sound here.
Spoiled scoring 30 a couple weeks in a row and things like that, but do you get concerned about offensive clunkiness a couple weeks in a row at all? Or
well, we scored over 30 and we lost, and now we've won 2 in a row. So no, I'm not concerned about that.
So that was kind of, my opinion, the whole narrative after this loss. Like, a lot of the fan base wants to be mad.
After this win. After this win,
excuse me. That's the thing.
Yeah,
that's so bad in Cincinnati.
Right.
It feels like a loss. That's the
exactly
thing. Is all these people want to get frustrated about the offense not playing well. And then there's this other side of the argument that is, it's an AFC North win for a team with a losing record. I'm not sure how much there is to be frustrated about. Where do you come out on this? Is it concerning to see the offense play like this?
Concerning, yeah, but then there's the caveats to it. I mean, Cleveland isn't a good team, but it is a good defense. Myles Garrett is a game record. JOK is they literally have a Pro Bowl player at all 3 levels. Now, JOK was an alternate to the Pro Bowl last year, but he was a Pro Bowler. Joe Hayden is one of the best corners in the NFL. Their whole entire secondary is really good in coverage. They're really sticky in coverage. So that makes it tough. And you could see, Burrow got sacked a few more times than you would have liked, right? But he also held on the ball a bunch of times with a lot of time to look around. And guess what he didn't see? He didn't see open receivers. It's because Cleveland's pretty good on that side of the football. So, yeah, would you like them to roll up 30 on everybody and not have to worry about, but they're playing this defense this week? Sure. And there are some teams that are capable of that, namely Baltimore, I think, can do that against anybody. I don't know who else can do that against everybody else in the league. Hell, Kansas City doesn't do that against everybody else. They're winning because of defense. And then the other part to it is this. There is sometimes you just manage the game. And when the Bengals got up 21-6, there was nothing more to do than manage the rest of that game. They also missed 3 points when Evan McPherson missed a field goal. That puts it at 24. The week before, it got to 17 because of Chase Brown running in the end zone when he shouldn't have. But they also left points on the field when Zach Moss fumbled in Giants territory. So there's been a little bit of that too. And I do think the Giants defense has the chance to be good. Now listen, Philadelphia ran it all over them on the ground last week, but they didn't throw it for a ton, and the pass rush got after them a little bit last week too. So, again, I think it's just the product of the last 2 games you played more than anything else.
There's also something, and we talk about this in basketball a lot. I'm curious to get your thoughts if this applies to football some. It feels like the Browns and this defense and the personnel they have is a bad matchup for Joe Burrow.
Yes.
Throughout his career. It just has been tough for him. For whatever reason, against this defense, he seems to struggle more. Now, and in football, it seems to be more like this team's good and this team's bad, so you should perform well against them and not against them. In basketball, we do more of this thing of like, hey, this team matches up well with this team and this team doesn't match up as well with this team. I think maybe there's some more of that in football than we probably talk about, right? Like the Bengals seem to struggle against this Browns team every year for whatever reason, with these 2 current staffs, schemes, personnel groupings that they have right now. Maybe that's just part of it. And oh, by the way, AFC North wins are ugly. That's just how it is. Like, I don't think you need to apologize for any AFC North win.
No, the column I wrote after the game was that winning gritty is just as good as anything else, and I think that was a gritty win for them. And for a team that's looking to stack victories, would you like them to be aesthetically pleasing 35-10 routes? Sure would. It just doesn't happen in the NFL. I don't care who it is. I mean, rarely do you get crazy blowouts. You get them on occasion, and because a lot of times crazy things happen in that course of the game. And there are some teams that are overwhelming other teams, and that especially happens when injuries pile up. No, I don't think either one of these last 2 wins you need to apologize for whatsoever. I mean, you're looking to stack victories, and you got 2 on the road, 1 at an AFC North team you hadn't beaten since 2017 up there.
All right, but the concerning part of this conversation is what you pointed out before, which is Burrow gets back there, he's buying some time, he's moving in the pocket, he's looking, and nobody's open. Is there a lack of playmakers on this offense? And that's almost hard to believe because we go into the season talking about you have one of the best wide receiving cores in the NFL when you have Chase and Higgins. You have an improved tight end room. You have Chase Brown in your backfield, who everyone's expecting to be a big play type of guy. It's hard to believe we're at this point, but is that a real thing right now?
I don't think it is, because you have 2 big playmakers on the outside, and they made plays on Sunday. I mean, T rips out of a tackle to go 25 yards for a touchdown. Jamar Chase makes a great move on the go route for his touchdown. He made a great catch the week before on a play where he caught it over his shoulder on kind of a scramble drill. The thing I think they're lacking, Rick, and you're kind of getting to the point a little bit. I don't think it's a lack of playmakers. I think Chase Brown's a playmaker. It's right now they don't have a third receiver they can trust or is able to get open. Andre Yoshivach was on the field for a bunch of snaps. He had 1 target, couldn't bring it in along the sidelines. Other than that, I don't have the advanced stat. I'm going to credit our guy Austin Elmore, because I heard him say it on Cincy 360. His yards per separation were like one of the worst in the NFL last week. Again, I think some of that's a product of the Browns are just really sticky in coverage. The fact that they can play some man coverage on guys like, hey, we're going to double Jamar Chase on this play. We're going to put Joe Hayden on T. Higgins on this play, and we got another corner who can cover the other guy man to man, and we're fine. But I do think the fact of kind of the last couple of weeks, there just hasn't been a third option involved in the passing game. And maybe it's been a product of the game that Joe in key spots is definitively looking for T and for Jamar. And that's where I as I mentioned, he's kind of looking around. First option's maybe T on a play. Second option's Jamar. He goes to the third option. That guy's covered. And I think that's the problem at the moment. Mike Gesicki, for whatever reason, has kind of disappeared in this offense. And that seems hard to believe with how well he played against Kansas City. Eric All has done his thing as a blocker. He'll get involved some in the passing game. I'd like to see him get involved a little bit more, but I think that's the real thing as we move forward, is who's going to emerge as the consistent third receiver. Is it going to be Yoshivach? Are we going to finally get Jermaine Burton to get his head out of his ass and get on the field and play? Is it going to be Gesicki kind of revitalizing himself? Is it going to be we're just going to lean into Eric All and go from there? I think that's the thing that needs to be found out for this team.
The lack of a third receiver is real right now for this Bengals team, but in terms of it being the excuse for this offense having some issues, I just question that a bit, because it's not like other teams have 3 receivers better than the Bengals. Most teams don't have the 2 top guys that the Bengals have. So is the issue that the Bengals' third guy and tight end room is that bad, or is it that they're not figuring out ways to use them well enough?
Could be both. It honestly could be both. I mean, don't forget, listen, Andre Yoshivach is a nice story. He was a 6th-round draft pick. I don't know what I expect of a 6th-round draft pick.
But that's on the Bengals then, because they're the ones who decided to trust this guy and keep shoving them down our throats.
No, I think they've done it by default. I think when they drafted Charlie Jones, that was drafted a year ahead of knowing Tyler Boyd was going to be gone and Charlie Jones is going to be the future slot receiver. That hasn't worked out. Took Jermaine Burton. Yeah, he's got headaches and troubles, but man, the straight line speed and the playmaking ability hasn't worked out. That is on them. I'll give you that part of it. Andre Yoshivach isn't on them. Honestly, Andre Yoshivach for a 6th-round pick is overperformed the pick level, in my opinion. Whatever he gives you is gravy. So, yeah, the guys, though, that they really drafted to fill that role haven't filled that role, and that is on them.
Yeah, the Jermaine Burton situation, is there anything? I mean, is this guy a lost cause? Is there anything new on that? Do you think he might be getting better? Is it just that they don't trust him to know the playbook? Like, where are we at with him?
I think there's a lot to that. I think it's learning how to be a pro. It's being where you're supposed to be on time. It's translating that stuff to the practice field. I mean, honestly, I know people are bitching about this left and right. I hear it on talk shows. I see it on message boards. I hear it from friends, and they're wondering, listen, if he was good enough to get on the field, they get him on the field. Because they need something like him, but he just hasn't shown them he can do it yet. And that's, to some degree, that's on him. And again, that's on them in the draft spot. But I don't think he's a lost cause. At least I hope he's not at this stage. If he's a lost cause at this stage, then the kid's just a lunkhead. I mean, that's on him.
Well, I would just say it's a little concerning that he's not dressing for games. He's getting no run at all when they clearly are looking for another option. Anyone that could maybe.
But doesn't that send a message? Doesn't that send a message to everybody?
To me, it does. And that's why I wonder. It's like, oh, man, does this guy just not have it at all? Is he not even close to what they want? Because you would think if he had any potential, if he was doing anything they liked, he would be getting an opportunity right now.
Same thing with Jordan Battle on the other side of the ball. Now, Jordan's gotten a handful of snaps the last couple of weeks, but some of that, the same situation. He needs to be a better pro. He needs to prepare himself better to play. And if he shows them a little bit more, I think that he'll keep getting a little bit more. His chances will expand, but he's got to keep showing them that. And I think both he and Jermaine Burton, I said the other night to some guy, I'm like, I do wonder, is this like an Alabama thing where they're just beaten so much into the ground as college players that they get to the NFL and go, whew, we're on easy street now. No. I believe it or not, the guy who was at Alabama teaching you these things and probably going overboard sometimes understands what it takes to win at a high level and should have prepared you for what you're going to go through in the NFL. And again, it feels like these guys get there and go, oh, thank goodness we're out from under.
Yeah, I think it's more likely that they didn't prepare them well at Alabama, and they were running a system that was great for college, super disciplined, all that, but didn't equate to beat in the NFL and succeeding at that level, because there's plenty of other schools that have hard-ass coaches, and their players come out and have success in the NFL.
I don't know, man. Saban, I think, is one of a kind.
I don't buy that. I don't think he's much different than any of the top coaches. He can't beat Kirby Smart. He couldn't beat Kirby Smart at the end.
That's a good point.
Do you think Kirby Smart was too soft? Like, I don't.
I think he's awful soft on having about 90,000 guys arrested and letting them keep playing. That's a different argument.
Yes, it is. Let's not go down that rabbit hole right now. Orlando Brown, Skinny.
Yes.
The injury there, big one for this Bengals offensive line. He is questionable for Sunday, it sounds like. Is that the reason?
Yeah, he practiced yesterday. We're doing this on Thursday morning on a limited basis. I'm assuming he'll go limited again today. We're taping this again before the Thursday practice. I would assume he goes full through the walkthrough and is able to play on Sunday. Then it's a matter of getting, can he get through that game? It's weird. So the injury is listed as a knee. It was announced as a knee on Sunday. After the game, he said it was his calf. Zach alluded to a calf on Monday, and then on the injury report yesterday, it shows up as knee. So maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's both. I don't know. Maybe it's all tied together, but
the dreaded knee calf combo.
Yeah. I just don't, that would be a big loss. I thought I didn't get a chance to write it this week because he wasn't available in the locker room, and I don't know if he's going to be today, and it's going to be too late by today because I wanted to write it today. I thought Zach Moss had an underrated role in Sunday's game, the way he helped Cody Ford pick up Myles Garrett a bunch of times, and I think he's done a lot of that this year. He's missed one blitz pickup, but he's been really good in pass pro. I want to see more Chase Brown as a running back, but if it's going to be Cody Ford at left tackle, you're probably going to have to play Zach Moss a lot to help him.
Yeah, Skinny, you mentioned that it's going to be big if he's not able to play, or if he starts to play and then can't go, and they have to.
You don't want this to linger, right?
Well, definitely don't want it to linger. But then also, I wonder, it almost makes me optimistic with the moves they went out and did this week, because they brought in Andrew Stuber from the Falcons practice squad, and then
they brought him in a couple of weeks ago, yeah, and just made him active.
Right, and then they also added this Andrew Coker guy out of TCU, but neither one of those guys, my point being, neither one of those guys are guys that I think you want to turn to and be like, we need you for major snaps to protect Joe Burrow on Sunday. Are you surprised that they didn't go out and try to find another guy with more experience or anything?
I think your point is right about that. That makes it feel more optimistic, and they're just adding some depth here, which they do need to have. But I also think it speaks to the NFL. I mean, everybody's scrambling for linemen. Everybody. There just aren't dudes out there.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the problem. It's also like, I know some people have brought up the idea of Jackson Carman.
No, I don't think it's a crazy idea, because he knows the system at least.
That's what I was going to say. It's almost like to the point where at first your immediate reaction to that is absolutely not. But then you start looking around and you go, actually, I can't. There's nothing else that makes more sense than that, really.
Are Stuber and Coker better? I have no earthly idea. They certainly haven't played. I've at least seen Jackson Carman play in games and be serviceable, right? I mean, we've all seen that.
Yes. This tells me how much they hate Jackson Carman.
Quite honestly. Question. No, there's
because
no question
he was
about
the obvious answer.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. I thought that honestly, if it came down to them desperately needing a backup for this week, that they would have gone and gotten Jackson Carman off the Jacksonville. I think he's on off the Jacksonville practice squad.
Yeah. All right, Skinny, the other topic that a lot of the media types wanted to bring up, at least the YouTube crowd wanted to bring up this week, is, of course, the NFL trade deadline is approaching. It'll hit next Tuesday at 4 p.m. do you think the Bengals are going to make a move? Do you think there's talk of making a move right now? Like, I know there's a lot of interest in that from the fans' perspective and media perspective.
Yeah, it's not. Well, I'm the one media perspective that doesn't dive into that because it's almost a moot point because they just don't. Yeah. I mean, we can throw out. Listen, it's easy click stuff. It's easy conversation stuff. They need to go trade for Cooper Kupp, or they need to trade for this pass rusher. Guys, they're not trading for a pass. Listen, they believe
Max Crosby isn't going to be a Bengal next week.
No. So here's the thing. You don't have to like this as a fan. I'm just going to lay it out, though. Listen, they like what Joseph Osai is doing all of a sudden. They like Miles Murphy because he's a first-round draft pick, and they need to play that out. They like their 2 starters. There's 4 defensive ends. You're not bringing in a 5th. You're just not. I'm sorry. You're. It's not going to happen. Now, if there's an injury, if Trey Hendrickson suffers a season-ending injury this Sunday, then yeah, you probably would have to go get a defensive end who's a pass rush specialist. I would give you that part. But as it sits right now with the roster, don't waste your breath on it, in my opinion. I guess it's fun for some. It's like mock drafts, and I'm guilty of those as well, that, hey, when the time comes, it's fun to do those. But it's almost a moot point because they just don't.
Well, I totally get the idea of like needing the clicks. You got to write something. It's a certain time of the year. You just put it out there. But what interests me is some of the guys who get so into it, like, I actually think they believe it. Like, I believe there are certain media members in this town that think the Bengals are trying to trade for Cooper Kupp right now.
Or think they're GMs.
I don't know. It's funny.
I mean, no, I think it would be nice if they did it. But they just don't.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't like to give up draft capital. That's what you're going to have to give up. I mean, I just don't. I'm sorry, I don't see it. I just don't see it. If there was a track record of this, I'd go, hey, man. And listen, I did a stint with our buddy Chad Brendo, who was filling in for Mo Egger yesterday. And I will say, I thought Chad brought up an interesting point, and I think there's truth to this. I do think more NFL teams are looking at the trade deadline now like baseball teams look at the trade deadline. That's why I think you see more of a flurry of activity. Like, teams have already decided to cash it in or cash it out, right? Like the Raiders giving up Devontae Adams. Part of it, Devontae Adams just became an ass. Same for Amari Cooper in Cleveland. He became insufferable, and understandably so, because he had Deshaun Watson throwing to him. And so he banged a shoe on the table until they made a trade and got it, gave to Buffalo. But I do think that you are seeing some teams say, all right, listen, our season's kind of in the tank here. Let's get something back in return for this and let's go. The Bengals love their draft capital, Rick. They just love it. And because they love it, whether we like it or not, we can argue about it. We can yell about it. We can point the finger of blame at them. And we can certainly do it in retrospect if they don't go trade for a guy who another team trades for and makes themselves better. And you go, that could have been our guy. I get all of that. But the point is, they just don't. So why waste your breath on it?
I think the term draft capital, like the popularity of that term, has led to the increase in teams making trades around now because everyone's obsessed with acquiring draft capital. It's all I hear now in NFL.
But part of it too is you're paying so much for superstars that you do need a bunch of guys on rookie contracts. You really do.
Yeah, well, that's what happens if you're going bad, right? Like, you realize we can't pay a dude all this money anymore. Right. Get him out of here and let's get young the next year or two.
Yeah, no, I thought that was an interesting point that you do. I think it's getting felt more like kind of the baseball trade deadline, where that's where teams that are out of it go, okay, let's get your prospects, your best guys, and we'll give up this guy because we don't want to pay him any longer. Yep.
There's one other thing I want to bring up that kind of relates to the Bengals-Browns game, but before we do that, it's because it's off the beaten path. We'll probably go down a wormhole here.
I love it.
The Eagles matchup. Anything else there that stands out to you about this?
I do. I think it's really cool that the twin brothers who were born 2 minutes apart will now get to face each other in an NFL game. Sidney Brown for the Eagles and Chase Brown for the Bengals. I'm writing that story today, actually. Got it started. These guys are so. They literally talk to each other every night. They're inseparable. They played together growing up through college. The first time they're on different teams, they get to face off. Chase's brother just got off injured reserve last week, played his first game of the season. And, talking to him yesterday, I said, how often do you talk to him? He said, oh man, we talk every night. And somebody else followed up and said, well, how about this week? He goes, no, we're not talking this week. I'll talk to him before the game. I may call him up before they travel and say, hey man, safe travels, but we're not talking this week. I think that's pretty cool to see twin brothers facing off in an NFL game.
It's awesome. It also, is that one of those things where the parents are just so freakishly athletic that every kid they have was going to be a professional athlete? Or did that dad pull off 1 in a million miracle where he had that one shot in a million to produce an NFL athlete, and he got a 2-for-1 deal in it.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, that really is.
By the way, that's the cooler story than the other family that we saw make history together this week with LeBron and his son.
Oh, my land.
Not to get down that. Maybe we'll talk about that in Ask Skinny Anything.
Yeah, is there one for that? Because I've got an opinion on it.
Yeah, we'll bring it up for Ask Skinny Anything. But first, I want to ask you about something else that's going to probably get you worked up.
Yes.
I was listening to you and Tregs do your post-game podcast.
Okay.
And I'm going to call you out on something because I don't believe you believe something that you said in that podcast.
Okay. All right.
The whole cheering for Deshaun Watson's injury situation. You guys were lambasting the Cleveland faithful all over them for cheering when Deshaun Watson got injured. And you guys did the whole internet thing of like, he shouldn't do that. That's bad. I don't believe you believe that.
I do believe that. In fact, I'll tell you this. There was a Kentucky-Purdue game I went to as a teenager, and I remember it vividly. It was a good Purdue team. They went to the Final Four back in 1980. They were playing in what used to be called the UKIT, the UK Invitational. They'd have a 4-team tournament around Christmas, and it was a tradition for my dad and I and another dad and his son to go to that in that time frame. And so a kid for Purdue got hurt, a kid named Brian Walker, and this lady, she goes, "Get that bum off the court. You're a bum." And I turn to her, I go, "Why don't you shut the blank up before I drop you?" I just don't think there's a place for that kind of stuff. I just don't.
Skinny, I don't know if saying you're going to hit a woman in this Deshaun Watson situation is the right way to.
I know. I just don't think there's a place for that. I mean, listen, he's a bad person. But at the end of the day, I mean, are we really rooting for guys to get hurt? Are we really doing that?
No, I don't think that's a good way to go about things. And I don't think that's what people typically do. But this is an extenuating circumstance. This isn't the same as some random dude at Purdue who had never done anything to your knowledge prior.
But you know what's so funny about all of this, Rick, is, you know, when the Browns made the deal with the devil to trade for him and give him all that money, I can guarantee you 99.9% of Browns fans were, "We got our guy. He's our guy." And then when he sucks, it's like, "Well, now I'm glad you're hurt." No, you just have an opinion from the jump street.
I agree with that. The boos were partially because he stinks for certain.
Yeah, actually, he was actually playing a pretty good game.
In that game, yes. But the boos started, by the way, before the game even happened.
I told you what was going to happen, right? That they were going to introduce him. He's going to get booed. And right after, it's going to be Nick Chubb for a reason. He's going to get introduced last because they want to turn the boos into cheers. That's literally what they did. I get it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I am fully on board, but I'm not naive enough to think that like all of Cleveland was waiting for this moment. And then when it finally happened, they're like, all right, now we're booing you because of all the bad things you did to women. This was absolutely because he stinks at football too. And they wanted him out. I fully am aware of that. And I fully agree with that. The thing is, I don't believe that it actually bothered you. I think this is like one of those things we do because the internet tells us we have to. And I don't believe that you actually cared that people cheered that Deshaun Watson got hurt. One, he's an absolute scumbag who sexually assaulted a bunch of women.
Agreed.
And two, what if one of the women were there cheering when he got hurt? Would you tell them, "Nah, knock that off"? I don't think you would. I think you'd be fine with them doing that because he's a scumbag.
Yeah, I just don't feel like there's a place for it. I just don't.
I don't think you're going to cheer for him, but I don't think it bothered you that Cleveland fans did, is my point. I think you said that because it's what we do.
I didn't tweet it out in the moment because it didn't move me all that much in the moment, but I did hear it, and I'm like, man, I didn't think it said out loud in the press. Like, this is ridiculous.
Fair enough. I will go on the record and say, boo him all you want. It does not bother me. The guy is a loser.
Actually, it's more cheer. They were cheering the injury. I don't mind them booing him when he gets introduced. That part to me is not.
You're right. They cheered his injury was the issue. I should clarify. It was cheering, not boos. But cheer him all you want when he gets injured. If you're at someone who's sexually assaulted, now look, if you had one case in your history and it's ambiguous and no one knows, like you got cleared of all of your wrongdoings, I do think you should have a life. I don't think you should be held to that forever. If you have 30-something accusations against you and there's clearly some fire there where the smoke's coming from, I mean, you're kind of a scumbag, man. I don't really care if like people are worried about you getting hurt or not. You'll be fine. It's not a life or death situation. He got hurt. He's going to have to rehab his ankle while he gets paid hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't feel bad for people cheering for that. It's fine. It's not a big deal.
He may never play again, and he's going to cash all those checks for sure. I will say this. I do feel really bad for Kevin Stefanski, the coach. I mean, the move that they made pregame to take some heat off Deshaun Watson, because everybody's claiming for Jameis Winston, right? They're claiming for him to be the starter, and I get it. Hell, and after week 2, I thought they should have benched him.
We were trying
to win games. But for them to then make him the third quarterback so he wouldn't be looking over his shoulder in the game was priceless in my opinion.
And then you need him. And then you needed him. Yeah. I mean, and now he's going to start this week. Thank God that happened, by the way, because they might now. Dory Robinson did lead them on a drive, but like they might have won the game had Jameis been in there right away.
I think they would have won some other games. I mean, they might have beat the Eagles at the Eagles with Jameis Winston instead of Deshaun Watson. But when the owner screws up so badly and handcuffs the coach, my Lord Almighty, what a mess.
I do agree. Now, by the way, the other part of that is I don't feel bad for Cleveland fans at all that they had to suffer through this Deshaun Watson, because you're right. They were all happy when they got him for the move. Not everyone, but there were a lot of people that were plenty happy and were hoping he was going to be playing well when they got him. And if he was playing really well right now,
sexual assaults be damned. You're right.
They would be overlooking it. They would absolutely be fine with him if he was playing well. So I agree with that part of it. I don't think they're like some moral compass up there in Cleveland. I get so sick of because the internet gets outraged about stuff. Now we all feel like we have to play by a certain set of rules. It's like, if you want to cheer for him getting hurt, I'm fine with that. He's scum.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to tell people what to do. You do you. I wouldn't do it. I think it's just disappointing that people did it. That's all.
Fair enough. I wouldn't do it either, but I don't disagree that it's disappointing. It didn't bother me whatsoever.